Guten Tag alle, heute werden wir über Relativsätze sprechen or relative sentences. We're going to go over relative pronouns in German. This is just the introduction video. There will be more to follow to go into a little bit more detail. However, German has both definite and indefinite relative pronouns. So in this video, we're going to focus on the use of definite relative pronouns in German. The most often used relative pronouns in English are who, what, and which. Now in German there are some basic rules, so we're going to go over those. There's 3 simple rules that you mustn't forget. Number 1, in German relative pronouns must be used, whereas in English they're optional. Number 2, when you're writing, commas must be used before introducing a relative clause. And thirdly, relative pronouns act like subordinating conjunctions in German, and if you're not familiar with what those are, you might want to review the video on that. But basically, they send the primary conjugated verb to the end of the relative clause. So let's take a look at this in an example here. As we've said, a definite relative pronoun must agree in gender and number with the noun or pronoun to which it refers, which this is termed in English the antecedent. The case of the relative pronoun, however, in German is determined by its use or its function within the relative clause. So let's take a look at an example in German. Das ist der Hund, den ich gesehen habe. Das ist der Hund, den ich gesehen habe. In English, that is the dog that I have seen. Now, der Hund here is the antecedent. That's the noun to which our relative pronoun is going to refer back to. You'll see that I've used a comma to set off the relative clause, which is going to be introduced by the relative pronoun. And then the relative pronoun was going to agree with the antecedent, so it's a der Hund, so we basically start with der Hund or der as the relative pronoun for it, but then it also has to be changed to reflect the use of how it's being used in this sentence. So in this sentence, if we were to put this in a normal order, ich habe den Hund gesehen, if I do it like that, you'll see the Hund is the direct object. So therefore, the der that is representing the Hund changes to den, and that's our relative pronoun. So, and then finally what happens in a relative clause is the verb that is conjugated, which in our subject is ich, our verb that's conjugated to fit ich or to agree with the subject is habe. That verb is going to be pushed to the end of the relative clause. So we put the whole thing together and we have das ist der Hund, den ich gesehen habe. Okay, so one thing you want to get used to is this chart on definite relative pronouns, and if you want to, you can make a copy of it yourself. Charts are good initially, but hopefully when you go into actually using these, you will no longer need the chart, but in the beginning it's helpful to refer back to it until it becomes second nature for you. And to ease with the understanding of the use of definite relative pronouns, what I've decided to do is to make a video over each of these cases using relative pronouns so that we can go into a little bit more focus on each one. And those will be coming along in the next few days. So one little note, unlike in English, a German relative pronoun that is part of a prepositional phrase must stay with that preposition. So for example, in English we can say, is that the man you spoke with? And we can have the with, which is our preposition at the end of the statement, in this case question. But in German, it has to stay with the relative pronoun. So ist das der Mann, mit dem du gesprochen hast? The mit stays with the relative pronoun, and it's preceded always by a comma. Okay? So das war unser Introduction, und ich hoffe, dass das geholfen hat. Vielen Dank.